Welcome to Unmasked, where we take off the filters and get real about faith, failure, and finding freedom. I'm your host, Wesley Farnsworth, a dad, veteran, author, and a man who's learned that God does his best work in the middle of our mess. Each episode, we'll have honest conversations with people who have walked through addiction, pain, or doubt, and with pastors, leaders, and everyday believers who are learning to live and lead authentically. So take a breath, pull up a chair, and let's get real. This is Unmasked. Have you ever felt God nudging you to take a step that you weren't ready for? Maybe it was leaving something familiar. Maybe it was forgiving somebody who hurt you. Or maybe it was finally stepping into the purpose that you've known about for a long time, but were afraid to pursue. For me, that step came when I sensed God calling me to start sharing my story publicly. To be honest, I didn't want to. I was comfortable staying behind the scenes, comfortable being the guy who helped others to tell their stories. God doesn't call us to comfort, He calls us to obedience. And the first step is always the hardest, not because it's complicated, but because it requires trust. In Joshua 1, God tells Joshua, "Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Faith always begins with movement. What I love about this verse is what comes before it. Joshua was standing on the edge of the Jordan River, looking at a promise that felt impossible. Moses, his mentor, the man who parted the Red Sea, was gone. And God's command wasn't sit here and wait for a miracle. It was get ready to move. Faith always begins with movement. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions or absolute certainty. It steps forward, trusting that God will meet you in motion. So many of us pray for God to move, but often He's waiting for us to. Fear will always offer you an excuse. If you ever tried to take a step of faith, you know that fear never shuts up. It'll tell you that you're not ready. It'll tell you that you'll fail again. It'll tell you that you're not qualified. It'll tell you that your past disqualifies you from your future. But fear isn't the voice of wisdom. It's an echo of bondage. When Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water, the wind didn't stop blowing just because he obeyed. The conditions didn't get easier. But in that moment, Peter experienced something that others never did. The thrill of walking with Jesus above the storm. Sometimes you have to step out while the waves are still high. Faith isn't about waiting for the calm seas. It's about trusting the one who controls them. Faith looks different after the fallout, though. In previous episodes, we've talked about the fallout. Those seasons when everything feels broken or uncertain. What I've realized is that when you've walked through the fallout and seen God restore you, your faith changes. It's less about performance and more about presence. Less about proving and more about trusting. And because of that, you begin to recognize the same God who met you in the rubble is the one calling you into new territory. That's what recovery and transformation look like. Not staying stuck in the past, but walking forward in the freedom that grace gives. You don't have to have it all together to move forward. You just have to believe that God is already there waiting for you. Moving forward isn't always dramatic, though. This is something I've learned about the faith steps. So they don't always look big. Sometimes moving forward just means getting out of bed and praying again. Sometimes it means apologizing. Sometimes it's showing up to your recovery meeting or going back to church or just making that counseling appointment. Those small acts of obedience are the bricks that build a life of transformation. Don't underestimate what God can do with a single yes. Psalms 37:23 says, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in Him." Notice it doesn't say leaps, it says steps, one step at a time. That is how faith works. Now, God's presence isn't the promise. When we talk about faith, we often think about the results, the miracle, the open door, the answered prayer. But the real promise of faith isn't a result, it's God's presence. He never promised that it would be easy. He promised that He'd be with us. When you remember that, the pressure can come off. You don't have to make everything happen. You just have to stay close to Him. Because when God is with you, even uncertainty can become holy ground. If you're listening right now and you feel stuck or scared or uncertain of what's next, I want you to know something. You're already further along than you think you are. The very fact that you're still showing up, the fact that you're still listening, the fact that you're still seeking God, that's movement. Don't despise small beginnings. Faith isn't about massive leaps. It's about consistent obedience. God has a way of taking small steps and turning them into stories of transformation. And one day, you'll look back and realize that what started as a shaky yes became the testimony that changed somebody else's life. So I want to challenge you. Identify one area of your life where God is asking you to step out in faith. It could be something that you've been delaying, doubting, or overthinking. Write that area down in your journal, or even type it into your phone if that's what you like to do. And then I want you to pray over it every single day this week. Ask God for the courage to take one tangible step towards obedience, even if it's small. Remember, the miracle doesn't happen before the step. It happens because of it. For me, personally, God was telling me to share my testimony. God was telling me to help other people, to share the things that I have gone through. And it took a while, and I prayed about it. And eventually, each small step that I took ended up leading to the publication of my book, The Blueprint of Becoming, a practical guide to faith, failure, and finding your way forward. It led to the start of this podcast, Unspoken with Wesley Farnsworth. It led to my speaking engagements, where I now come and speak at churches and at men's events and at retreats and conferences. And I share my story about the things that I have gone through. Small steps can lead to big results. Will you take that next step, write that thing down, pray over it, and take one small step in obedience? Thanks for joining me today on Unmasked. If this episode encouraged you, would you take a moment to follow, rate, and share it with somebody who you think could benefit from hearing it? Learn more about me, my book, and how to hire me for speaking engagements or coaching services, and find freebies that I'm currently offering over at wesleyfarnsworth.com/start. Have questions or interested in appearing on the show? Shoot me an email at unmasked@wesleyfarnsworth.com. Until next time, remember, grace is greater than your past, and freedom begins when we live unmasked. God bless you.